Hello everyone and welcome to Open Office Hours Coding for May 16th, 2012. I'll be here, and so will Gavin.
Hey.
Hey. Okay. So, we do actually have a question. And the question is, for C++ Week 5 homework, should we put the enumeration above main, or do you need to give it its own CPP and header file? An enumeration does not need a CPP file. An enumeration just needs an H file. And whether or not you place an enum into a header file is up to you. And the decision that you need to make is, do you want the enumeration to be accessible from other CPP files in your program? If you do, place the enumeration in a common header file, or a header file of its own, depending on the context. If you don't, place it above the functions that you're going to be using it on. So if it's only going to be used in main, just place it above main. You don't need to stick it anywhere else, unless you need it elsewhere.
So, I guess that about wraps it up for...
Yep. Good night, everyone.
You got to be quick with those questions.
Yeah.
Okay. Sweet.
So how are there 10 people here and no questions?
Those are all the guys who just turn up because they love our sparkling personalities.
Huh.
Timing. Getting my product struct to be viable outside of main.cpp was crazy. I managed it, but it might be worth mentioning to others. I know that homework was in today.
Was it in today? I thought I did it for next Friday. Or no, are you talking about the last week's homework? Yes. Words are hard.
Wow.
Words are hard. Yeah. The product struct, you really need to place it in its own header file. And a structure does not need a corresponding CPP file, because a structure is not a concept that matters to the linker. Basically, conceptualize every programming feature that you are aware of in C++ and categorize it as either something that the compiler cares about, or something that the linker cares about, or something that both care about. Functions and methods the linker cares about. Functions and methods need to be placed in CPP files so that they can be mashed together during the final stages of compilation. Structures and enumerations, however, are a purely compiler-based concept. And as a result, a structure does not need a corresponding CPP file. It only needs an H file, and that H file needs to be imported into each of the CPP files it's used in. So,
because by the time it reaches the linker, that's gone away as a thing. It doesn't exist anymore.
Yep. All a structure does is tell the compiler how far into the structure's memory does it need to reach a member. And once those instructions are emitted by the compiler into as assembly, the linker doesn't really care about it, because at that point it's irrelevant. But functions are cared about the linkers. So functions do need a prototype and a corresponding CPP file. I had a problem with storing a list from my room into binary writer. Well,
that's not a question.
I think I see where he's coming from, though. Now let's talk really quickly about...
I was just being pedantic for the sake of it while your Visual Studio fired up.
No resharper. No resharper makes me sad. How would be done by now? Okay.
Indeed.
Okay, if I were to...
Is that from Raymond, that question?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a addendum to it further down. Do you have to use binary formatter?
No. Do
Might
not.
be a no then.
Binary formatter is Satan's spawn. I
Get off the fence. Oh dear, excuse me.
I really do not like binary writer or binary formatter. Binary formatter is used. It's a built-in binary serialization class in the .NET framework, but it's very slow and very, very heavyweight and requires a lot of additional work to even make the thing do the thing it's supposed to do in the first place. There are so many. If you are going to use a prepackaged binary serialization format, you should really choose a third-party library over the built-in binary formatter class. However, we're not using either. We're going to be using a straight binary writer. And the way that we store a list of things into a binary writer is a little bit more complex. But let's take a look at it. Okay, so now I have a list of rooms. If I were to store this into a binary writer, the way you do this is binary writer does not have an overload for lists. I'm guessing that you got an error similar to what I have right here. You probably got an error saying something like, cannot convert from system collections generic list of room to string. What this is meaning is that the binary writer has no overload for a list. It doesn't know anything about lists. So the way that we serialize a list is we prefix the first bit with the count. And the count is going to be an integer property, which does have an appropriate overload on the binary writer type. After we write the count, then we can loop over every item within the list and store each one of its properties separately. So we can do binary writer write room name, binary writer write room description. So now if I were to read this back in, I could say using var br equals new binary reader file.open stuff file mode open. So if I wanted to grab everything out of that file, I could say list room loaded rooms equals new list of room, and of course I'm just going to use implicit typing here because it's Then I can say var room count equals br.readInt 32 for var I equals 0, I smaller than room count I plus load in an individual room equals new room, or yep, and then we say room.name equals br read string and room.description equals br read string, and then we add it to our loaded rooms list. Now if I were to loop over loaded rooms, I can say console write line room desk room name room description returns. Actually, what am I doing?
In your binary writer, you used filemode.create.
Mm-hmm.
Is there not? What options are there in filemode? I can't recall off the top of my head.
We have
See,
append.
I would have used open or create. Not.
Well, what create will do is
Oh yeah, no, it will overwrite. Sorry, I expected some sort of distinction between. Is that what does create new do?
create new should create a new file. If the file already exists, an IO exception is thrown.
Okay.
But anyway, if I were to run this program, you'll see all of the rooms got loaded back into my loaded rooms list. And it did so because of the way I stored the data. I didn't store any actual physical concrete type. I didn't do any super awesome reflection serialization-ness. What I did was I simply printed out, first of all, the count of how many rooms. Then I printed out each one of the room's attributes, name and description. Then to load them back in, the first thing I do is I read in the room count from the binary reader. I loop however many items were in the room collection that was saved, and then I grab, the order is important here, I grab the name and the description. And when I say the order is important, is if I was to grab the description and then the name, you'll notice that the names now become the descriptions and the descriptions now become the names. Because it matters the order that I read it in, because that's going to be based off the order that I write it in.
This touches on a discussion that I would also back up that's been going on in BuzzNet, which is the best way to come up with these is to essentially open a text document and write out an example room as if, and just literally write it out in the format you want it saved in. It will save you a lot of worries. Because then you can literally set it up and look at it and go, all right, well, the first thing here is going to be the number of rooms. So that's the first thing I write in my save method, and that's the first thing I write in my load method. Mm-hmm. And you can just go through line by line like that. And it will save you aggro in terms of things when you're not used to it, like how to separate your values and what characters to allow for things like indicating different values and such like. Anyway, end of thought.
Okay. So Raymond, just let us know if that was
if you skip
acceptable.
all the way down to Dave's question while we're on the C#, which is, do we have to keep the room data and everything else in one file? Can we split the room data into its own file? Just thinking that the room description, items, inventory, etc. can end up getting big.
No, keep it in one file, and it won't get that big. I'm sorry, I can't be more of, help in that sense, but if you keep it in one file, that's the most appropriate way to do it. The fact is, the data has to be stored at one point. Storing it in a single file will make the job of loading and saving, and most importantly, presenting a user with a list of available saves. That'll make that code all easier to understand.
The key thing is to think about the formatting of that file, though. I don't really know how else to put it. Just think about how XML or an HTML, any sort of markup language file is laid out. If you're interested in going deeper into sort of nice ways of formatting it. Because you can do things like recognizing particular substrings of lines when you're reading data in and so forth. It's sort of beyond the scope of what Nelson's sort of asking of people in the lesson.
Did the week 5 C++ homework need to have the vending machine functionality? Let me answer that for you. I honestly forgot. I'm not trying to be. I am kind of trying to be a smartass, but I'm
failing.
Yeah. Oh, the answer is no. The answer is no.
Hang on, what? Wait, what?
He was asking if it needed to have the vending machine functionality. The answer
Create
is no.
an amended version of last week's homework.
But right here, we don't define any way to purchase things. Therefore, the functionality isn't present. The bulk of the functionality is going to be present, as well as the bulk of the existing structure of your project. However, the purchasing of items does not become relevant. And if you put it in there, that'd be great.
To be honest, it should still be in there.
Yeah, but
there's no reason to have taken it out.
True. There isn't. But on the same token, the prompt itself didn't specifically call for that function.
Well,
it kind of did in a roundabout way, but not in a specific, because I specifically listed out each one of the states that main should be in, and
this
none
is
of
why
them.
I'm no longer taking responsibility for your homework prompts. I'm making it very clear that I didn't write them. They'd be spelled correctly if I'd written them.
Is there a naming convention for pointers in C++? There are many many naming conventions in C++, but if you prefix pointers with PTR or any other thing, that will be very irritating to look at. You should not prefix or treat pointers as any different as far as their naming than you would normally. So a local variable that's a pointer should follow the rules of a local variable. A public field should follow the rules of a public field. A private field should follow the rules of private field, parameters, and so on.
See, the thing is that is the point of using a specific casing, or and with pointers, you've got the syntax of the language to tell you that it's a pointer. It's because it's got the pointer symbol.
Right. I've seen a lot of people.
Yeah, you really don't want to be clutching it, because apart from anything else, you're going to be writing a lot of pointers if you do any amount of C++, and you're going to get sick very quickly. I've been through this. I went through this stage with C#. I had all these great ideas for how to name things, and it just becomes something else to remember, which is the exact opposite of what it should be, which is a convenience.
Yep. Okay, what time is or was the C++ homework for week 5 due, Gavin?
Whatever it said in the thread that you had open moments ago. I don't know. I just post this stuff. I don't read it. Probably noon today. It's usually noon, I think.
Yeah, noon today.
Of course, I haven't picked it up yet, so you might get lucky.
Okay, presumably, to load in which rooms are connected to which, we should do something similar to what we did for loading the player into current room. Yes. You should.
I would highly recommend looking at, and I can't remember if it's freely available to member sponsors. I think they made it so just after I bought it. In the A-star videos, Logan does a very nice little video, which might even be named Bidirectional Connect, where he's connecting two different nodes together. But the principle remains, and the sort of the logic of his program is quite nice there. Just a little extra something if you're all run out of things to do. Yeah, Bidi Connect. That was the one.
Yep, so basically what I had here was when I persisted a room, I wrote the room name, the room description, I wrote how many connections it had, I looped over each one of the connections, I wrote their direction, and then I wrote their ID out. Same thing with items as well. And then in the load method, what I did was I grabbed the connection count, and then I looped from 0 to the connection count, then I connected the rooms, given the direction, and then grabbing the iRoom from the game dictionary by using getGameObject and passing in the GUID that was printed out.
See, what I find is interesting is I would have taken the approach of having a kind of container, a level, similar to the way it was done with the Hyperion, that actually dealt with connecting the rooms together, like a like a level building class.
Yeah.
That dealt with pairs of rooms and connecting them up properly.
Yeah.
That may just be because, you know me, I'm more from the math side of things than you are.
Well, remember the connect room method in particular, it's on the class, but it's not on the interface. So it's not like you could connect a room during runtime, or that you are that you should be connecting a room during runtime. It's entirely, but you can if you write specific functionality.
See, it could be some really interesting traps and stuff. Spinning rooms and elevators.
Yeah, that's true. But still, though, okay.
Sorry.
So, Could you show how you would split the room, binary writer, and binary reader into different files, interfaces, state, and command? Yeah, so, for example, in my save game command, what it does is it instantiates a new binary writer given the file name. It writes how many game objects there are. It writes their IDs and their types. Then it loops over each one of them. It grabs a persister object for the particular type of that game object, which I actually ended up splitting the load and save methods out of the classes themselves and creating an GameObject persister interface, which has a create method, a load method, and a save method. So the persister factory is simply a static class with a static method that takes in a GameObject type and returns the appropriate persister based off the type of item or the type of game object. Now, I would typically use a dictionary reflection and other neat, fun stuff to do this, but again, I'm leaving the code that I write, I'm working really hard on keeping it down to something that I would be willing to explain in the 102 class. So,
for those of you who are in the MMO class, you're going to have some fun.
But anyway,
sorry, it's just chaotic code.
So I have a player persister and a basic room persister at the moment, and they basically do their normal stuff. The create method creates the game object, and then the load method loads it in, and then the save method saves it out. So that's how I got the loading and the saving out of the actual game objects themselves. So then my load command looks like this. My load command instantiates a new game, a new binary reader, creates a list of objects, then I do have to alias this out into its own structure, but whatever, I'll do that later. Imagine this was my own custom structure. And then I got the object count. I loop over the entire object count. I grab the ID, I grab the type, I instantiate the persister, I tell the persister to create the object, I add the object to the end of the list, then I add the object to the game. If it's a player, I set the game player to that object. And then after that, I loop over every object in the linked list of objects, and I use the persister to load in each one, and then I tell the engine to begin the game, and then I switch the state to the room state. Yeah,
seeing as we were talking about it just the other, was it yesterday? Can you just go over the specifics of what made you pick a linked list in that situation?
I picked a linked list because
the linked list.
The way I only needed to loop over it, I didn't need to do any direct indexing, and just in the back of my mind, I figured I would be doing a considerably large amount of insertions. That being said, actually, the most appropriate way to have done this would actually, as far as performance, is done this. Oh, come on. What are you called? Tell me what you're called. Tell me what you're called. I know you're in there. I know you have one of these.
Get enumerator?
No. You'll understand when I...
Reserve?
Yes. Why don't I have...
No, sorry, it was reversed that I saw.
Actually, the constructor takes in a capacity. There. This would be the most performant way to perform this. I get the object count, then I instantiate a list of objects, and I pass in the object count into the list, so it allocates all the bits of memory it needs to store all those objects.
I did see at least one question asking what a tuple was in one sentence.
What tuple?
Yes. I got there about the same time you did. I just realised that's what you were going to do.
A tuple is a way to pair together data in a very general sense, but the discussion about how, why, when, and the appropriateness of using a tuple, how it works with generic type inference with the tuple.create method, goes beyond the scope of really what I wanted to do in open office hours.
A tuple's somewhere between a multi-dimensional list and class.
Think about it this way.
It sort of sits in between a list and a class.
Well, think about it this way. A list is a list of is a 0 to infinity items of homogeneous types, meaning it's 0 to infinity items of the same type. A tuple is a fixed amount of items of any type you wish.
It's very nearly a struct, in fact.
So basically what I did was I replaced the tuple with a class that just has the properties that I wanted to represent. Notice that all my classes are public. Well, because
he created them with ReSharp.
Well, because none of these classes need to be internal. And the reason none of these classes need to be internal is because this is the only solution in the project. Remember that classes, you have two options with top-level classes, as in classes that aren't nested in other classes. There's two options, are internal and public. There is no reason for me to worry about internalizing any of these types because there are no other assemblies I have to worry about. Curry, tuples can store any type, yes, but they have to be of a fixed width. So you can have a 5-item tuple, and each item in the tuple might be a different type, but that 5-item tuple will always be a 5-item tuple. Not only that, a tuple is an immutable type, meaning you cannot alter what it points to inside of the tuple after you instantiate it.
Can you show them the tooltip for what a really long tuple does? Because I think it's really quite cool the way they've programmed it.
You mean like this? Where I can do like int tuple, and so on. Anyway, it's not at all important that people understand this.
I just love the fact that they've basically gone, okay, we're going to write 7 overloads, and then they've just gone, no, I'm bored of writing overloads. Let's just take in another tuple at the end of it. And you can go on doing that for a ridiculously long time.
Sorry, I just got here. Did you cover how to store the room connections to a file? Didn't I?
Yes.
Yeah, I did. This. Can you look at homework 3 that I submitted and tell me what I did wrong? I don't actually have your homework. Gavin does.
Who's that from?
Florin. I had difficulty to create the move room command and structure my idea and how I should start it. Yeah, the move room command, the way I implemented it was I said engine.game.player.move new room, and I said engine.switch state new room state. The constructor of the move room command takes in a room. And the player.move method, all he does is simply sets his current room to the move you moved to.
Wow. Florin, type your username into the questions panel, please?
I did my select room in a while loop inside my start game command. Well, the way I did it was I have a room state, and to transition between a room state, you simply set the engine to be using another room state, and the room state takes in an iRoom as a parameter. So the room state, when rendered, prints out the room and all the connected rooms. And then when you get the command, what it's going to do is parse the input. So you'll notice I do have a move command. And the move command simply says var room equals room get connected room. with the direction the user wanted to move in. Then I say if the room that they try to get into is not null, return a new move room command. So the move room command gets instantiated with the room you want to move to, and when it gets executed, it moves the player and then switches to another room state with the new room as a parameter or as an argument to the constructor. I'm really stuck with trying to keep the direction of a room compared to another, north, south, east, west. Is there a certain design pattern or strategy to attack this problem without loss of redundant code? I did it. I just didn't. If you look at my game factory, I instantiate all my rooms, and then I connect them together manually. And I think that's going to be the most flexible way to do it, period. I mean, there's no other. I guess what you could do is you could write a method like static void by connect, and then do iRoom left, room left, room right, string direction, and then you can say var opposite direction equals direction, or string opposite direction, switch direction, case opposite direction equals north.
Presumably you've got a room connection method already. Could you not just call that each way around?
No, my connections are just strings. They're not directions.
Oh, right.
So that you could have 50 rooms connected to another room. And then, so given this method, now you can say something like by connect engineering to cargo north. So this will make a connection from engineering to cargo with the north direction, and a connection from cargo to engineering in the south direction.
See, if it was me, I'd have put the string parameter in between the two room parameters.
Yeah.
Because then you read it engineering north to cargo. But again, that sort of thing comes down to sort of stylistic considerations, what you choose, the way you choose to lay out your code.
Yeah. But this is how I would do it. I would not lose the flexibility of making a uni-connected room, or maybe even a triple connected room for whatever purposes. I wouldn't make that force that restriction on the designer of the game. But if you did want to save some typing, methods are your friend.
Yeah, see, what I was thinking for the bidirectional connect would be to have a unidirectional connect method that takes in the left and right rooms, and then just call that twice, passing in the left and right room parameters the opposite way around for each.
Yeah.
And obviously you still have to have the direction. For things like one-way doors and stuff. But yeah.
Well, these are connected rooms right here. Like, notice how you just
I know, I walked through your entire level, typing move north, move north, move north, move north, and got there and went, there's bugger all here. I've just sent you, or I'm sending you when it finally goes, Floren's
Okay.
thing. I've put it in the MMO Dropbox folder just because it was there.
Okay. Raymond, did that answer your question, though? At least how I would approach dealing with this situation? Okay.
I've rather lost track on the questions.
Yeah.
How far down?
For my room, I did room name, description, connection count, direction ID, connection ID. Is this good? Room name, description, connection count, direction ID. Yes, that's exactly how I did it. Can you see my player CS? I think I already did that. I'm starting to get deja vu here. Have I been just like answering the exact same five questions in the last hour? That would be really creepy or crazy. Yeah.
I know. I went off after Florin asked. I went off to send you his file, and I've lost track of how far down the list you got. So I stopped ticking them off.
How does the engine work exactly, and how does it work with the other commands? My engine's just a state manager. And the game is just... basically, my engine's just a state manager called engine, and my game is just a wrapper around a dictionary of game objects. That being said, having these concepts named and create classes for them does speak a lot to the language of your code, especially the fact that I do have a public iPlayer here, for example. You couldn't do that in a dictionary. So, yeah. My game is just basically a collection of objects in a current player. Doesn't mean that's all it's ever going to be. It's an extensibility point as far as I'm concerned. And then my engine is just a game loop and a state manager, and that's it. Are we going to learn tuples in 102? Probably. And see. That's being terrible. The problem with tuples isn't that they're conceptually difficult or impossible to read. In fact, they're conceptually very easy to understand. The problem with them is the way that they're implemented takes advantage of a lot of different bits of the way that generics, or what C++ developers would know as templates, in the C# language. What?
I'm losing videos, which usually means I'm about to blue screen.
Oh. Bye, Gavin.
So I may well be going.
Still here? Nope. There goes Gavin. Okay. Have you done any checking to see if the room you were trying to move to exists? Yes. In my room state, you'll notice that I check to see if room is not null before I return the new move command. If room is null, then the execution of this method will end up going down here to line 48, and you'll get an invalid command. I could have just as easily done another command or returned another command that informs the user that they've moved somewhere invalid. Could I set the current room property on player instead of player.move? You're more than welcome to. However, I generally dislike public setters, and you'll notice that, like for example, string name does have a public setter. That's again a thing that I am doing just because the way to express how to do the persistence, given what we've covered, would be a little bit out of scope. But you'll notice on my actual interface for iPlayer, there is not a single public setter. All of these setters do not exist on the interface. I consider a method like this to be more readable and understandable to a person reading through your code than using a setter on a property. Because what it feels like to me, when you say player.currentRoom equals new room, what it feels like to me is you're saying, player, you are now in this room. Like you just magically disappeared from one location and appeared in another. When you say player move to iRoom, now the player has the language that you're expressing with your code is more imperative. It feels like you're instructing the player object to perform an operation, and he may do any computation he sees fit. Now you could turn around and tell me, well, why don't you use setters then? Well, because again, it's the language of what the code looks like. When you have a setter, you are literally setting data on something. The language doesn't speak to an operation. The language speaks to you are literally saying, "Player, you are now in this room," and then the player's like sitting there, like, "No, I'm not." I mean, it just, yeah. I personally do not use public setters very often. I typically wrap them in methods. I overloaded connect rooms so I could do one direction or both directions. Yeah. That works too. Okay, did I answer everybody's questions? Because again, the way I went through the question list was a bit haphazard. So if I missed anybody's questions, please let me know. I'm not trying to ignore anyone. I just... Oh, yeah, Florin. The code should be in my Dropbox by now. Yes, it is. Let's extract you. Oh, oops, wrong one. This one. Okay. Firing up your Slin. So how's everyone doing? While my Visual Studio instance decides to take a year or two to start up. Comcast is... They haven't done any more interruptions, and I have yet to send them a very angry email. It was about an hour after I lost connectivity that I got it back. Very, very, very frustrating. So I'm definitely going to write them a very upset email. What's happening? Scared of tomorrow. What are we even covering tomorrow? I'm sure it's something fun. Oh, hey Gav. Gav's back. Let me bring him in. Oops, not presenter. I need to make you an organizer.
Hello.
Hey. Okay, yay, we gotta do implicit typing, read-only, and const. People have been bugging me about that. Okay, so I'm looking at something and seeing what someone did wrong. Huh. Yeah, you're gonna want to connect. You're gonna want to create a. Actually, wait a sec. This is homework 3. What was homework 3 again? Can't remember the.
No, I've completely lost track of what week's which.
Too many classes going on. So that's that. Week 3 homework. Well, it's because like this is a continuation. I can't remember which stage of the program it should have been.
Yeah. I just about managed to lock in by about Friday each week, and then I lose track again.
Okay. I think you were supposed to write without the game extension. I mean, you could. Okay. Actually, so let me try then. Load. Whoa. Yeah, that works. Other than I don't see any way to switch between rooms.
I think that was only in the 4th week, wasn't it? Or am I wrong on that?
Yeah.
You just had to store the rooms. You didn't have to connect them for week 3. I'm just looking now. allows the user to enter the name start game command, creates a new game object, fill it with rooms and a player, transition into a room state for the initial room. Yeah, it wasn't necessary to move between rooms for week 3.
All right. The one thing I would say though is definitely the states themselves are not supposed to have any logic other than rendering and input input handling. So if you were to take like the load methods and the load code, and the load command and the save command would be the place to do them, because at that point then you could invoke either one of these commands from anywhere within your application. So for example, my load game, it takes in this load game can be invoked from anywhere within my program, no matter what state I'm in. Whereas if I were to take this logic and place it in my state, it would only be invocable from the state itself. I'm having issue with week 5 C++ homework. Could you take a look? Week 5 C++ homework. Load state. Oh, you mean my load state? Yeah, my load state is this. So you'll notice the only thing it does is it does that. It presents a UI to the user and delegates off to the load game command if that is supposed to happen. Okay, so I guess I'm going to go ahead and switch over to Sean. Hello.
Speak to Sean.
He might not have a mic.
It is possible.
Okay, so you are getting a linker error that says unresolved external symbol winmain. Winmain. I think. Whoa.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, but we're getting a lot of...
Yeah. It sounds like, yeah. There's...
Sounded like there's TV.
What I think might have happened is you might have created a... or hold on. No, print product info. So if you look at print product info, you're invoking it inside of main. Could you scroll down in main? Oh, yeah. You have print product info commented out. But, oh no you don't, you have one at the top. That should work. Does it compile? Or am I not? Was it a typo? Because... Okay, close. Unresolved external symbol winmain referenced in function tmain crt startup. You might be getting that because you might have created a Windows project instead of a console project. See, winmain is used for Windows projects. So you might want to...
How can you tell?
I can't remember. I'm going to... Yeah, jump into the properties. I can't remember which property it is. Yeah, try general first. No, try general up there. Using sand, that's fine. Under solution.
No, the project properties in the Solution Explorer.
Are there project properties in the Solution Explorer? Here, let me Google this real fast. Change.
Well, if you right-click on the project in the Solution Explorer.
Oh, yep. Jump into don't. Go back to where the thing you were in before. Jump into linker and then system. And at the top, yep, change the subsystem to console. And now try to build. Yay.
Hurrah.
But that should at least get you going. Alrighty. Were there any other questions now that we're over here, or was? Alright, I'm going to jump back over to me because I can't hear you if you're talking. Alrighty, how do I jump back? Jump back to Jason, which is me today. Alrighty, in C++ Week 5 homework, what is supposed to be up in description for the product structure? I believe I did mention that I would like to see a description field, but let me verify that because I apparently have an atrocious memory when it comes to this. Okay, so yeah, the description is going to be just another string field. So string name, double price, string description. For our save game, how can we put a default file name in the prompt, like player name, and have the console read line take it in?
It's tricky, that one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can you fake user input to the console is essentially.
I actually have an idea. I've never tried to do this before, but I have an idea. Bear with me for a second.
I tried to do this once. I spent the whole day trying to do this once and just gave up in the end.
Okay, so console dot in dot. Let's see if we can. And as an IO text reader. No. There's out, and out of course has write, but in doesn't seem to have anything that you would be able to use. We can open standard input var using var writer equals new stream. Seriously, what are you complaining about? There you go. Stream was not writable.
Oh, what's that? What are those set in and set out methods?
Those are for setting the text reader for in and out. I don't think...
Can you do it with set cursor position? Could you do it as a console.write and then do a set cursor position back to the... And that might work, because then when... I don't know, depends.
You probably could, but then readline still wouldn't return what was already in there. I mean, I guess what you could maybe do, string input equals hello world console write line input. Then we can do while actually console read key. That's a console. What am I doing? I'm just gonna say what.
You're typing console delete, console delete, console delete a lot. That's what you're doing.
So I'm going to do info, and then I could say input plus equals info key char if info dot key equals console key enter break. This is getting way too complicated, way too quickly.
I think it's good though, because this is proper coding. Here's a problem, solve it. And actually it is quite an interesting problem, because it's one of those ones that you think is going to be really straightforward until you try and do it, and go, oh, yeah, that's a problem.
Hold on, so we first want to set cursor position to console cursor left -1 console dot cursor top, and then we can say console right space and then set it back close, and then we can now say else console write info dot keychar. But to an extent, this is what you would be doing. So for some reason, when I backspace too far, though, so there you go. Now it's not perfect.
Wow.
There's no way to use the left or right arrows. Well, there is, but it will be very problematic. For example, I mean, what I could do is I could say if info dot key equals console key left arrow, then I could say, well, move it to the left. And then, well, then, see, this becomes a problem because then I have to, yeah, this will only allow backspace and typing forward. Backspace and typing forward, and that's it. You would have to spend some more time working with the info.key to get it to work with other scenarios.
The easier way to probably, if you wanted to have a go at doing it, would be to set it up such that any key other than enter would delete the prompt, and you'd switch and you'd fake it because you'd just you'd clear and rewrite the line.
Yeah.
As an empty prompt and just do a normal read line. and if you hit enter, then you would just take the value that you sent into it back out again. That would be how I would approach that. And as DStew says, yeah, easy in a WinForms app. Easy in any sort of graphical app.
But anyway, so you guys see where I'm coming from with this at least implementation. It's not perfect, but this is the direction that I would go in if I wanted to. And I would definitely turn it into a reusable class library or something that I could use in other situations. And I'm sure there already exists stuff like this for console apps.
But little projects of about this size are quite interesting to approach at this sort of level.
Yeah.
Because they're nice and concise, but they make you think about things in a logical way.
All right. Are we supposed to have the user add a description? Yes. So like if they enter the product dog, you might then add a description, a good dog. Yes. I've worked on so many e-commerce applications, built so many e-commerce applications, and maintained so many e-commerce applications. The word product to me has a name and a description and a price at the very least, and it'll always have a name, description, and price.
And an ID.
Well, which is a GUID. Well, not necessarily a GUID, not on the systems I maintain. Okay, so I think it's about time for me to go outside and wait for any final questions.
Yeah. All right. I will hang out here and watch them tumble.
And we're back. We do have a question.
From Zach saying, are we done?
So, passing things between other things, that's what your constructor's for. So, for example, my room state has an iRoom constructor, or constructor parameter. Just like my my move room command takes in an iRoom as a constructor. So I really don't know what more else to say about it other than create a constructor parameter. Constructor parameters are your friends. Remember, you should, in a well-architected system, you should be able to look at the constructor of a class, and you should know not what it does. You should know what it does based off the name of the class and what namespace it's in. But by looking at the constructor of a class, you should have a decent idea about what things it works on, what bits of your code that it depends on. And doing it this way is really good, too, because it encourages you to have fewer dependencies between your classes. And actually, that's all I really actually had to say about that.
Well, and also, it did just remind me of one thing, which is if in a function, not that you've done this here, but if in a function you find yourself having to do, say in here, you were doing a lot of room.this, room.something equals something, room.something else equals something. If you find yourself doing that a lot, all to the same place, it could be indicative of having put the function in the wrong place. Nelson, do you know what can you explain that in a more properly clear way?
Well, yeah, if you run into friction when developing a class, finding that you don't have access to the things you need to, then it's an indication that you might even be better splitting those methods up into multiple classes that do very specific things. So you'll notice right now my move room command is very anemic. It doesn't do a lot. It doesn't have a whole lot of functionality in it. But the most important aspect of this command is it's a location that's easily discoverable within the code base, and most importantly, it's an extension point. It's a point in which if I needed more potential behavior to happen when moving between rooms, I would have a place to put it. A place to put it that wouldn't interfere with other bits of my logic, because it's an isolated place. So don't be afraid to create additional classes. Now you can go crazy and create too many classes. Just head over to the daily WTF to see instances of that.
Instances.
What was this again? The user agent parser site, WTF.com. Yeah. Does everybody know what a user agent is? A user agent is a string that every browser sends every page it visits, identifying the uniqueness of the browser. So like your browser will say that it's Chrome or Internet Explorer or whatever. Here's an instance of using too many classes to solve a non-existent problem. The point of this class and the corresponding XML configuration files is to do something that's really straightforward that could have been done in a single class. So this is an example of going a little bit too crazy. I mean, really, just Google the enterprise on the daily WTF to find instances. Ooh, the enterprise rules engine. I like this one. Oh, no, this is a different rules engine. But anyway, the point is that you... Oh, this is the one. A dependency graph that looks like a diagram of, like, string theory and...
That's insane.
Yeah, you can go overboard and write code like this if you create too many classes. However, there is... It's a problem if you have too few classes. It's a problem if you have too many. When you sit down to R&D a project, do you find yourself building your abstractions first, or do you just jam functionality together and then structure your abstractions based off what you find? It depends. It depends on if I'm R&Ding a project that is similar to another project I've done before. For example,
I've noticed with your coding, you generally seem to work. It may just be that familiar, like
it is.
The number of projects you've worked on before. You tend to work from the outside in.
Yes.
You work from the top of the hierarchy down, from the interfaces down. Now, see, at my level, I still have to work the other way.
Yeah, and that's...
If I'm doing, for instance, a room system, I will start with a room, a room object as a thing, and then I will build a room that depends on those, and then I will build the level that takes in the room. I have to kind of bounce back and forth through the hierarchy, just because. I think that's comes down from experience, really.
Well, yeah, you should have seen the original implementations of RuneSlinger. The original implementations of RuneSlinger had very, very few abstractions. It was horrible code, but that was me learning Photon and Unity at the same time. So as a result, I just tossed things together, and as I started to implement more and more functionality, I realized, wait a sec, I know of a way to abstract this to make this cleaner, and then I know of another way. And now when I approach a Unity/Photon project, I have a very specific sort of architecture that I work with that serves me well. The same is and that approach actually has led me down the wrong path in some situations, particularly with web projects, because for my job as a web developer, I was the go-to guy for building applications that are meant to be, very extensible, large, and robust, and all that stuff. So I got very used to thinking in that sort of direction with websites. So when I sat down to develop a website, I would start with the abstractions that I knew to work. But when working in an application that is unfamiliar, or working to build an application I'm unfamiliar with building, that can lead me down the wrong path where I choose the wrong abstractions at the start. And I've gotten really much better at that over, the years. But on the same token, it can be, it's a good thing and it's a bad thing. It's a good thing if it works, and it typically does for me. Because it saves me time and lets me work in a comfortable level of abstraction that I'm familiar with. But it's also, like I've said, led me to situations where I've picked the wrong abstractions or too many abstractions for a problem that wasn't suited towards it. So again, it's
just thinking of some of the slightly heated discussions we've had about design in recent months. Well, it comes down to, if you can justify your decisions to someone else, then, or if you can, and there doesn't even have to actually be someone else. If you have justification of your decisions as to why you've gone about something a certain way, then that's good. That's fine. It's when you find yourself making decisions purely based on the fact that, oh, well, I like working in this way, or, oh, I've done this before and it worked. You can get stuck in a rut apart from anything else. You can lose touch with if somebody comes up with a better way of doing things.
Yeah.
It's easy to dismiss it because it's not the way you like to do things.
Yeah, and again, though, the way that I like to do things were, at least in the specific instance of going from building e-commerce applications to more or less CRUD systems, the problem was, I was used to building, e-commerce applications. What do we need? We need large amounts of auditing, stability. We need proper separation between aggregate boundaries. We need manageability over consistency. We need proper validation, the ability to change database schemas in a sensical way without having to destroy the data. And those requirements made me think about problems in a certain way. And going to a project with other requirements it leads you down the wrong direction. But on the same time, it has served me well, writing abstractions first, if the abstractions that I've chosen are appropriate for the situation. And all that comes down to is experience. So hopefully that answered your question. Because it didn't really answer your question. It depends. It depends on the experience. If you're just learning a new platform, a new environment, even if you're just learning a new style of application development, although you're still using a comfortable environment that you're in, do it feature first. If you've built similar applications in the past and you have confirmed success in building things a certain way, then there's no reason to waste your time writing poorly designed code just to refactor later. At that point, you have the experience and knowledge to do it right the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. The refactoring goes on in your head.
Yeah.
Before reaching the keyboard. Whereas, certainly when you're learning, if you're coming to a new problem, just code it out in literally step by step, all in main, if that gets you done. And you'll see, even doing it that way, as you go through it, you'll immediately start to see, oh, actually, I could make use of that again down here if I just make it into and then you refactor out into a method. I mean, you'll end up with, a program.cs that's full of methods. And already you'll have some idea of, well, these methods are all to do with showing stuff, so I'll move those into a different... And you can that's how you sort of go about going from a procedural old-fashioned coding approach to a sort of moving across into an object-oriented approach. And just the more you do it, the further along that process you can jump into it without having to do the early stages longhand.
Yeah, and good design also, the experience of knowing what constitutes good design really comes with project maintenance. If you can maintain your project easily in the future, in 6 months, in a year, add new features, fix bugs, that sort of thing, then you've done a good job. If you find yourself having difficulty, then you should revisit your architecture. Because that's all good design's about. Good design's about maintainability. Well, and readability, of course, but readability, I believe, is a function of maintainability. Because, you can't maintain it
before you can change it, yeah. Well, I think that's as good a place as any to wrap up. We haven't had any more questions come in for quite a while. So, and that's quite a nice conceptual discussion. So I shall just tick those three off, and that's a cool picture.
What, that thing? Buildmaster?
No, the class diagram with all the lines that looks like something out of Houdini.
Oh, yes.
I might color invert it and make it into a desktop. Anyway, thanks for joining us, those of you who did. Thanks for sticking with us, the three of you who stuck with us.
Actually, we got 6 people still holding on.
6 of you, sorry. I did that. I always do that because it's... Anyway.
And by next week, I expect everybody to have a fully functional ARM processor written in terms of a transistor class. So yeah.
Cool.
Okay, and I guess we'll see you later. See most of you guys tomorrow. So bye.
Bye, guys.